Good evening, and you're very welcome to a bit earlier than usual in the week on Sunday night, our special edition of the Women's National League podcast for today. Aaron, of course, joins me again for another show. It's a bit earlier in the week than normal, but I suppose we just took the advantage. We were both sitting and we said we might as well jump in and do it to get the week off to a good start. How's your last couple of days been?
Yeah, been good. Got to obviously watch the big game of the weekend in Tallaght, so been good.
Leitrim County final.
Listen, we all watched a bit of the other sports over the weekend as well. We all got to see the joy in Irish sport, and no, it's been good. It's been interesting and lots to talk about from yesterday's games, obviously, and I'm looking forward to delving into them. Different games have different talking points, and I'm sure we'll get them across the next little while.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, plenty of action over the weekend, as you mentioned, on the Gaelic fields, rugby pitches. But from our point of view on this show, we're really only focusing on what happened on the Women's Premier Division pitches over the last couple of days since we were on air. I suppose really, let's talk about Shelbourne first. They were facing a daunting enough task of going over to Tallaght to try and keep their league title. They're slim enough before the game league title hopes. It didn't really go their way, and I suppose they'll be kind of ruined, missed opportunities, and a couple of fortuitous maybe efforts, and some that Shels might not be that keen on reflecting back on even over the next couple of days. But disappointing for them, beaten in Tallaght 3-1, and effectively that ends their league campaign. Maybe not mathematically, but as good as 1 point for Peas is all they need to ensure that Shels are out of the race.
I think the nature of the defeat for Shelbourne is probably what shocked a lot of people. Like I tweeted during the game, I was like, I haven't seen Shels being cut apart that sort of way since they lost 5-0 to Peamount. Even at that, they were the better side up until the first goal goes in against Peamount. But like just how Rovers took them apart from the start. Like Shels got on the front foot early on, but they just never really got a hold into the game. And once the first goal went in, you sort of thought, okay, they're going to score a couple. First goal, I think Amanda McQuillan is quite poor for the first goal. Goes under her body at this level from shot from distance from Scarlett Heron. She should be really keeping that out. And then soon after went on you. I know she's going to kill us for saying this, but to me, the question is it a cross or shot? I'd be more inclined to say it's a cross, but loops over the back of Amanda McQuillan at the back post, and then you're sort of thinking, when will they score again? Not if they'll score again. Joy Ralph was just an absolute. I'm not going to use the word. I was going to say a joy to watch, but absolutely
fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
She was unbelievable to watch. Her movement, her ability. You just have to look at the ball. She played in for the third goal to Alana McAvoy, found her in acres of space at the back post, and Alana just taps home to me, say thank you very much. Like you could just see how much Rovers sort of stepped on the gas, how much Rovers realised. I think it was a bigger game for Rovers than it was for Shels, because Rovers hadn't beaten Peamount or Shelbourne in the league, albeit they beat Peamount in the All Ireland Cup, and Peamount sort of had a couple of changes, but they'd struggled to sort of get results, and you could see from early on they were intent. And like just the link-up play between Rovers is probably what impressed me most. Like to see every attack, you're sort of thinking, are they going to create something clinical here in the first half? Like second half, I think Rovers took the foot off the gas. They realistically knew they didn't need to step on the gas. If they needed to go more, they probably could have gone more. Sort of allowed Shels a little bit back into it towards the end, but Shels struggled to create chances. And I think you look at the goal they did create. Rebecca Devereux, a lovely left-footed strike. She's naturally right-footed. A lot of people have been talking about her for a good while. What she's been doing for the Shels underage, linking up with young Hannah Healy as well. Like the interesting thing is Noel King made 4 changes at halftime. He could have pulled any one of probably 10 players off at halftime, and he made the 4 adjustments. Took off Alex Kavanagh, Megan Smith Lynch, Rachel Graham, and he was the other one. I'm trying to think who the fourth one was, but that just shows you, Morgan Rees, that just shows you he wasn't happy with how they were going forward. And like the biggest thing for me is how do Shels turn this around? How do Shels sort of go at Rovers again when they play later in the week? Like I just think from a Shels viewpoint, they're a whole bit shell-shocked at the way Rovers played, because that's probably Rovers' best first half performance in the league by a mile.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about substitutions, because Noel is not exactly renowned for making subs over the years. He's been very, very slow at nearly every team I've ever seen him been involved in, changing his tried and trusted favourite starting 11 from game to game. He rarely does it. So for him, it's a fairly big statement for him. We saw it in the Champions League where they made a load of changes late on, almost sacrificing the game. Was this an admission from him that he knew it was done and dusted by the time that kicked in?
I'd say probably so. He wanted a bit of reaction. Like I was talking to Andy when we walked out of the game yesterday, and Andy was saying, is it a case that he wants to look at the FA Cup next week? I don't know. I think it was more of a case he wanted a reaction. And I think he knew he needed a reaction from his players. Like I think Christy Gray done okay when she come on. I thought Hannah Healy didn't look out of place, and obviously Rebecca Devereux created a couple of chances. Like realistically, you're sort of expecting three of them subs probably even start this week. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, and like that's the sort of thing that you're expecting from Noel. He's gonna have to do something different. I just think from a Shamrock Rovers viewpoint, they're just motoring since the break. They've won every game, looked comfortable enough. The addition of Scarlett Heron into midfield has been massive for them. I think Scarlett's done very, very well for them. Then the one probably name that a lot of people were probably forgetting about was Joy Ralph. Joy Ralph probably could have went to any club in Dublin and been successful. She come from Shels, then she went to DLR originally underage, and went to DLR, and then obviously on the Rovers. Like any of the clubs would have wanted her. You can see how much of a threat she was. Like I even seen her last year when she was making her debut for DLR, playing against the likes of Bows. For someone so young, didn't look out of place, and you could see how much she's probably playing with a bit of confidence, and probably what the move has been good for her. But like you look at the Rovers defense, they'll be disappointed to concede that third goal. But if they don't concede that third goal, you're probably saying like it's been a comfortable, easy enough night for them. The third goal probably takes a little bit of a gloss off it, but like you have to be very impressed with Rovers. You have to be at what they've done. I thought if you look at the first goal in particular, it just shows it's a testament to Anya Gorman that she's chasing the ball all the way down to the touchline to keep it in play before playing it back to Scarlett Heron. Like that's just a magnitude of someone who probably doesn't need to do that, who could just rest on her laurels and sort of say, listen, I'm in the twilight of my career, but she was intent on getting that ball and keeping that ball in play. And I think that's sort of the difference. Like Noelle Murray tried a couple of flicks here and there for Shelbourne, but she was just marshaled out of the game at long periods. You could see the Shels fans getting a little bit restless. They weren't getting what they really wanted for the game. But I think the biggest thing for me out of the game, Breffney, is I don't know if you've seen it yesterday. The attendance at the game, I was very shocked. 388.
Yeah, it's poor. It's poor, and that's the most worrying thing I think for the league is we're seeing players leave, and we're seeing the likes of Abby Larkin, who was one of only two players to play in the World Cup from the league. She's now gone. She made her first start for Glasgow City today. That seems to be going well for her as well. She played the full 90 minutes, and we're looking at the best talent been taken out of the league. And talk about the likes of Joy Ralph and Ella Malloy. We're going to chat about later. She was involved in the goal against the equalising goal for Wexford yesterday. She's probably the standout player on the pitch for both teams. And we're seeing these type of players coming through. How long can we keep them? Where can we go? We've talked about this at length on the show, but in terms of how can we get these girls to stay and pick a women's National League team or a League of Ireland Premier Division, women's Premier Division side as a real alternative to what's available in other countries at the moment?
Can't. At the minute, what we've got, we can't. And like you'd like to know, was yesterday's attendance just a mixture of everything that was going on, with the fact that Peamount playing up the road at the same time?
A lot of hands. If the daughter or whoever was the fan wanted to go to Tala yesterday, I'm pretty sure the person who's likely to bring them, which is probably the sports parent, for want of a better word, I'm not going to say father and mother, but whoever's into the sport, I'm pretty sure they would have been told, do you know what? You can watch it on LOI TV. I'm going to watch the rugby. The attendance, I was in the showgrounds the day Ireland won the Grand Slam, and it was crickets. And I was the only person in the media area in terms of work and media, and there was very little there in terms of crowd. I'd say there was more on the pitch and the dugout than there was in the stand, and that's just the timing of it. And that's going to be a worry again for next weekend.
Yeah, although the game is 45 minutes earlier to sort of, but that's more of a case of, was that a case to suit them, or was it always but like that is your danger. And you've also got the Peamount and Wexford game live on TV. It's strange. It's an interesting time at the minute because we see the bounce off the Irish women's team with the tickets for the game in Tala. like it's an opportunity to go and watch a big cup semi-final in Tala. I know I have heard that Shels are trying to do a bit of promotion within their fans because they don't have a game at the weekend. Hopefully Rovers will do something similar and try and get some big numbers out and support. But it's difficult, and you could really sense with the lack of crowd there. Like Shamrock Rovers have had 2 or 3 attendance records this season. We've seen Wexford have attendance records for them at home. We've seen Boas have attendance records. We've seen Sligo. We've seen many clubs actually have attendance records this season. But to see a crowd of 388 for such a big game was disappointing, but it wasn't entirely surprising.
Other than bragging rights, though, is it really that big of a game? Let's be honest about it, because ultimately both sides went into that knowing, okay, if they lose, they're out of the title race. But if they win, are they really in a proper race? Like it's a race, but it's not a race for first place at this stage.
I get that. I get it. I think it's a bragging rights game, but I think when two clubs like that, I think the FAI tried to bill it as the Rings End game, the Derby of Rings End, where both teams are originally being from Rings End. So that was the way the FAI tried to build it out, and I don't think it really caught on. Like I said the other day, I was like, I said to a couple of lads, I was like, Shamrock Rovers women and Shels women don't really have that history of the Rings End teams. Neither of them were around when the clubs were in around the Rings End area. So I think the billing of it was quite difficult. It's a strange one. I think probably you're right in what you're saying. Is with not a lot to play for. I think we'll probably have to judge the attendance really on this week, see what sort of crowd, because it's a massive cup semi-final. The other side of this weekend is obviously with season tickets not being valid for clubs. Fans paying in, home fans paying in as well. Will they try and push even more? Like that's the dynamic that I think is in play, and I'm a bit skeptical of what type of crowd they will get. But
I don't know. I don't think the financial thing has an impact at all. I know everyone's kind of broke at the moment across the whole country, and everyone's got extra bills and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I think going to a game, I don't think paying a $5 at the gate or a $10 at the gate is going to be the difference between going and not.
No, I don't mean, when I say financial, I don't necessarily mean people paying in. I think from the clubs, it's going to have to be a big driver because it's an opportunity for them to create the extra revenue. Yeah. So I think that's where I'll be interested to see if Shamrock Rovers really push it, and Shels as well, because you have to remember, because it's a cup game, I assume Shels get a share of the revenue as well, like they do in the men's cup games. So I'd assume it's the same thing. So the onus is on the two clubs to sort of drive attendance and drive numbers through the gate. And like I know last year when it came to the cup semi-final between Shels and Bows, I think Bows season ticket holders got in for free and Shels season ticket holders got in for free. They decided, let's just do it. Let's just get a crowd into Tolka Park. And I can't imagine something similar will happen this week, but you'd hope that they would get a decent crowd, because there's no men's League of Ireland games on Friday night either, which is a help with the international break.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on from Shamrock Rovers and Shels. Obviously, they're back in action this weekend again in that cup semi-final. Plenty to talk about that later in the show. You mentioned Joy Ralph. Let's talk about her former club, DLR Waves. They were down in Athlone. I watched a little bit of this game on Saturday afternoon. To be honest, it was a tough watch. A lot of the league was a tough watch this week. Again, we'll talk about commentary non-existence later in the program too, in Sligo again. But at Lone Town, DLR Waves, what your thoughts on this game? It was a 1-0 victory for Athlone Town. Jesse Rosman got the goal. But Athlone looked much the stronger side, and DLR Waves, they look to be in a bit of bother now.
Yeah, they are in a bit of bother. I think results are hard to come by for DLR. The type of fixtures they have. I seen Kane Kieran tweeting yesterday saying we should remember Jesse's name, but as someone who's going to make an impact in the league. I think from an Athlone viewpoint, at times they haven't been pretty, but they've just been grinding the results out. I think for them, winning 1-0, they won't really care if it was pretty or not. They'll just want the 3 points, and it's a strange one because we're eyes a little bit on the cup semi-final as well, potentially, because it's another massive magnitude. Like from an Athlone viewpoint, I just think Athlone will be happy with the win. It wasn't the greatest game. You're right, it wasn't the greatest game of football. Probably never was going to be. I don't think that pitch really helps as well when it comes to great football. But from an Athlone viewpoint, that game was just about winning. That game was just about getting getting 3 points and keeping that momentum going from DLR. It's been a really difficult season. It's not going to get any easier for them. And the one thing I will say is Laura Heffernan has admitted that. She said the problem is a lot of times they need to make sure they're not making the mistakes that they are making in games, and they're getting punished. And like, it's hard to see where DLR are going to pick up points between now and the end of the season. The only real game you probably say is potentially the Sligo game. That's probably the only one that they may pick up something.
I don't think you can say that about Sligo anymore after this.
I don't think so, but that's the only game where you'd sort of say they may get something from.
Yeah, I suppose DLR, when you look at them, I suppose you look at the result of the weekend guarantees they will be outside the top 7 in the league this year. They'll be in the bottom 4, more than likely in that 8th position. I can't see anyone getting enough points, although mathematically, if Sligo continue their form, they will pass them out. But I think that's a bit of a stretch too far, potentially, for Sligo. 5th place last year, they've really dropped from the top of that middle tier within the league, almost out of sight. And it's worrying that they're 12 points off Athlone ahead of them, but only 5 ahead of Sligo, who have, by their own admission, probably not had the best of seasons. So DLR, they've just collapsed this season.
DLR were expected DLR to be. Unfortunately, when so many players go out the door in the last 3 windows, it's really hard for DLR to compete. They haven't really got that, how would you say, magnitude of talent pool at underage. So when they lose a decent player, how do you replace them? That's the problem for them, and that's the conundrum that they're struggling with at the minute. And like, they're aware that the problem is with the likes of DLR. We probably would have said this about Peamount as well, that when we seen Peamount lose the players, how are they going to replace them? But they've been able to replace them with some of the youngsters that they have because they have a decent academy. Whereas DLR don't necessarily have that. DLR necessarily more have to bring in players from other clubs to sort of facilitate their underage teams, and it's very difficult for them to get the players to be able to make the step up and make the transition. Like, you look at the average age of that DLR Waves team, I'd say it's quite young. Like, I'd say Jess Gleeson is by far the oldest player. I'd say the next oldest player is probably about 22, 21. Like, there's a massive disparity between age and experience, and I think that's DLR's biggest problem, is that with them not being able to hang on to the players, the experience that these sort of players have in the league. And you'd have a bit of a fear about the upcoming transfer window as well. Can they hold the players again? Will they find it difficult to keep the players again? I would say probably yes. The problem is, from a DLR's viewpoint, is when other clubs are able to offer certain things or financial things to sort of, in a way of an expense or something, how do you keep a player? That's the problem. How do you keep a player? Like the one player, and I'll be out today, but she didn't play this week again. She was on the bench last week. How they've kept Eve Bandana is beyond me.
Well, it's funny. You've actually preempted my next question, because there was a bit of a trend in recent weeks in the league, and it was very evident this week. We're starting to see, I'm going to say, second choice keepers, reserve keepers, or people who have players who have filled that role predominantly through the season. And DLR is the first one. We talked about this maybe last week or the week before on the show about Rugile. Okay. Making her coming into the team and kind of making an appearance there as well. But we're also seeing that Niamh Coombs replaced Niamh Reid-Burke at the weekend for Peamount. They got through that 2-1. There was no major issue there. Of course, Niamh's well established within the league herself, probably the most experienced number 2 in the league this season. Nicole Nix has come into the team in Wexford as well. We're starting to see these youngsters coming in and really impressing through various performances. And as well, Maeve Ryan came in. She played a little bit with Treaty over the years, but Rachel Kelly, who was sent off, she came in, saved a penalty, and then unfortunately from her point of view did concede it. Well, she didn't concede it, but there was a penalty scored on her for Bowes to take for Wexford to steal a point at the end, a point they probably deserved, to be fair. But these young keepers coming in, there doesn't seem to be that gulf in class in terms of these youngsters coming in with little or no experience and producing impressive performances.
The funny thing is, though, you talked about the likes of Niamh Coombs. I think Rachel Kelly's even younger than the likes of Niamh Coombs. That's the funny thing. When Rachel sat on the bench for a long time for Shels before having a little bit of a spell abroad and impressing with coming to Bowes. But you're right. Regila's come in. She had a bit of experience with Bowes playing in the National League, and then went to DLR. Had to buy their opportunity. But the Wexford one is interesting because Wexford have also played Claudine Keenan this year as well a little bit, and sort of given a bit of a rotation within the goalkeepers. And like Maeve Williams has been sort of number 1, and then all of a sudden there's been little chopping and changing. Like I look at Wexford under-19s team quite a lot just to see what's going on, because they've just got oodles of talent within the team, and you sort of look who's playing. Like, you look last week, Alan Malloy started for the under-19s in a game against Cork, and you're sort of thinking, oh, here, Cork had some good ones playing as well. But then you're looking at the goalkeeping situation, and then one week it could be Nicole Nixon goal, the next week it could be Claudine in goal, sort of a bit of chopping and changing as well, whoever's not on the bench for the first team. And like, I think there is some really young goalkeepers. I think Summer Lawless is another one who sort of deputised a couple of times for Amanda Budden in goal for Shamrock Rovers, and hasn't really put a foot wrong. The problem with these young goalkeepers is they need to play games. I know Maeve Ryan at Bohs has played a lot of under-19s football as well this year, which has probably allowed her to be able to come in and do what she's doing for Bohs. And I think that's probably helped a lot of these other goalkeepers, is the fact that they're playing a lot of underage games. I think the one bonus for a lot of these keepers is that the under-19s keep the way you can have a couple of overage players, have your goalkeeper as one of them is always, it can always be a nice bonus. Like, I think if you look at Shels underage teams this year, I'll ask you the question before I'll tell you who it was. Who played in goal for Shels under-19s in a recent game?
You asked me this before, and I can't remember who you told me. I got it wrong then. You told me the answer, and I can't remember what it was.
Gemma Quinn played in goal for them. Yeah. So, like, you know what I mean? And that's the sort of the thing, whereas I think there is good goalkeepers. Katie Keane was sort of, I think from what I heard, Katie Keane was sort of told by the FAI, listen, you need to be playing regularly if you want to get into the Ireland under-19 squad, which is valid and fair, especially with some of the other keepers that we've talked about. So for that to happen, and then her to go to Athlone and sort of really stand out and make herself established, like I said at the start of the season, and I said it on this show as well, I said I thought Katie Keane should have been given a chance at Shels in between the posts. She obviously made her debut against Sligo away, but other than that, she hasn't. And I thought she was someone who probably could have done Shels a good job and may well have been in between the posts. But the problem, not necessarily a problem, well, maybe it is a bit of a problem, having so many young keepers coming through us, where do you facilitate them all? That's probably what the problem is over the next couple of years, because we say
problem to have, though. Like, genuinely, it's a great problem to have.
Yeah, but the other side of it is and we say this regularly, is going forward, the next crop of talent are probably going to be better than this crop of talent because of the infrastructures that have been there with the underage leagues. Is where do you facilitate all these players? And I think that's where, when we eventually see the expansion to a second division, that's where we'll see a lot of these players play and get an opportunity, but and then they'll step up into the bigger clubs into playing. And like the future is bright. It's great to see so many young keepers getting opportunities and playing for the clubs regularly enough this season.
Absolutely. Of course, that game, DLR disappointed with that 1-0 defeat, but to be expected, Athlone much the stronger side. Coming back up to the top of the table, Peamount United, they know what they have to do to win the league title. Just keep winning, and the rest will be out of games. Before
we talk about the pitch, what happened in the actual game itself, we have to talk about what happened at the start of the game.
Go on.
Peamount played the first 12 minutes with 10 players.
Okay.
So if Doyle was not allowed to start the game due to a nose person, the referee said it needed to come out. They couldn't get it out, and Peamount ended up having to substitute her after in the 12th minute. By all accounts, she was absolutely distraught. Having to come off so early. If that had been a big game and Peamount had to drop points, it would have been massive. I feel for Sive. It's one of these things that
I wasn't aware this happened, but the rules clearly state you can't have that kind of a piercing. I know most girls tape them up or whatever. You probably find it hard to tape up your nose, though. But if you're not allowed it, you're not allowed it. I know some referees probably maybe turn a blind eye to it, but in my experience, a lot of them would have the exact same reaction to that.
Yeah, I don't blame the officials on this, but I think it should have been sorted before they even went out to warm up. I think it shouldn't have ever got to what it got to, because it's a bad look for Peamount. It's a bad look for Sive. And like, listen, Sive is one of the top players in the country. Sive is one of the candidates for football. Has to be one of the candidates for Player of the Year this year, alongside our Peamount teammate Karen Duggan. So, like, I think
Karen Duggan's head and shoulders above everybody, but that's not a slight on anyone else that would be nominated. I think she would have picked it up at mid-season break, to be quite honest with you, but that's neither here nor there. But you're right, Sive Doyle has had a very, very impressive season. It's a rookie mistake from her, from the club. I can't really blame the official, though. I think it's just the rules.
It's sad to see it. It's sad to see it happen, and that's the thing. It's sad to see it happen, but I 100% don't blame the officials on that one. And sort of, you're only thinking what ifs if you're only thinking what ifs if I had to come back to bite them. But on the field, Treaty made them work hard for it. They didn't have it. They didn't have it their own way. Aaron McLaughlin from the spot, and then Aaron got the second goal, and it was former Peamount player and Orla Fitzpatrick with the goal for Treaty. Like we said last week, they wouldn't have it easy. They didn't have it easy. Treaty didn't come up to Dublin just to lie down and give them the 3 points. Another good defensive display from Treaty United. Alvin Heisel probably disappointed, but for James O'Callaghan's side, like that's 15 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. Like the record is just absolutely unbelievable. It's mesmerizing to even think how many points they've picked up in the games and not dropped them. Like if they get a win this weekend, they're literally within touch and distance of. They're within a point of win. They need 4 points from the last 3 games to pick up the trophy. And like I hate to say it, but I'm running out of superlatives or things to say about Peamount at this stage. And I sort of want them just to get over the line, so then we can actually, give them the full praise they deserve, because what they've done out in PRL Park this year is nothing short of sublime. It's been unbelievable. Like they've done it the hard way as well in a lot of games. They've dug out results where they probably shouldn't have dug out results, and I think character is probably the biggest thing. And as you say, you've mentioned her name already, Karen Duggan leading from the front. Karen Duggan she's an icon in this league. She probably, with the likes of Kylie Murphy, Pearl Slattery, will go down as some of the biggest icons. Anya O'Gorman to have played in this league, and like continues to drive from the front. And like it was a good 3 points for Peamount, but they did have to work for them.
Absolutely. They proceed on towards that league title. I think it's destined for PRL Park, and it will probably be, in my opinion, in whatever number of years, 13 years, 12 years of watching this league, probably be the most impressive performance on its own merit, but also considering how they were rated at the start of the year. It doubles the impressiveness of that. I have a lot of time for what's happening down there on and off the field.
Players they've also they've lost during the mid-season. Tara O'Hanlon through injury, Kate Mooney going out the door to Lewis. Like it's not even the start of the season. Then mid-season they lose players, and you start thinking, oh no, not again.
I do think though that time will catch up with them, unfortunately, and I think the way the league is going, we saw the likes of Shelbourne Rovers coming into the league this year. We see Galway United merging with the men. We see Wexford merging. They were merged with the men, but officially, in terms of branding and everything, becoming part of the men's club, and all becoming kind of standardized between the men's and the women's. And I think the fact that their women's side is the dominant side in the club will ultimately come down to it. They don't have the facilities of the others. They don't have while they do have the underage talent, they don't have the same structures that exist in the League of Ireland in terms of funding and all that sort of stuff. And I think that will catch up with them. But I love that they gave one last kick in this, and it might not be the last kick, but it's some hell of a kick over the last 8 months or so.
I think realistically they probably will get told at some stage by the FAI. Listen, like St. Kevin's were told when Kevin's come into the underage teams, you either link up with a team or you're gone. I think we may see that eventually happen. But
there is another alternative, and I'm just throwing it out there, and this would be phenomenal for a story point of view. They could be told you got to be part of a League of Ireland club, so it's like, okay, let's put a men's League of Ireland team in. That would be a beautiful story. That the women's side was what dragged the men's into the League of Ireland. I can't really see that happening. I can see it being much more realistic that we will see them link up with someone like St. Pat's, merge with St. Pat's. And Peamount would be their training base and their underage game base, and then they would play their games in Richmond Park. I think that's probably more realistic. I know Pats have a women's setup, but I can see those two being merged together. Pats obviously operate.
It makes so much sense. But the thing is though, like everybody just writes Peamount off. Like everybody probably said Peamount will drop out of the league 2 years ago.
We did it at the start of the year.
Yeah, but the thing is though, we did it at the start of the year, but we were quick to turn around and be like, oh, sugar, have we made a mistake? Have we made a mistake? We were quick to realise we've made a mistake. We've made a bit of a mistake here. And the thing is, I think James O'Callaghan gave me a bit of abuse recently when I was chatting to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, you're giving us praise now," but like the thing is, they deserve all the praise. They deserve all the praise they're getting, and that's the biggest thing about it, is that it's not what they've. They don't talk about what they've lost. They talk about what they have and what the next game is, and I think that's probably the most impressive thing. Like, there's times where I try to be a pain in the hoop, and I go to James, "What about chatting about a game? It's 3 weeks down the line." He's like, "No, I don't want to know about it." He's like, "You can chat about it next week, no problem." But he's like, "You ask anything about anything else, you're not going to get anything out, man." I think that they're just so solely focused on one at a time. And I think that's probably been a massive help for them, because I think realistically, a couple of years ago, they probably went in 2021. They probably were thinking too far of a bigger picture. Like, I know there was celebrations planned for after the DLR Waves game. They had everything planned that it was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. And then, like, I remember leaving PRL Park on that night in 2021 thinking, this is like a graveyard. It's like I've been at a funeral. And I didn't have confidence that they'd get over the line against Galway the week later. And then, like, coincidentally, I went to Tolka Park that night when Shels won the league. So,
yeah,
it's
going to be interesting to see how they close it up. But I think they will. Let's look at some of the other games. One big game, I suppose. We talked about this at length. Sligo's impressive form in the last few weeks continued into the first half of their clash with Cork City in the showgrounds the other night. They were 3-0 up just on the half-time mark. Doherty scoring either side of Casey Howe goal. Those two, have been super impressive for Sligo this year. But then it seemed like they switched off. 3 quick goals in 5 minutes, turned the game completely on its head for Cork, and they came away with a point that they very much deserved in the second half. And I suppose both sides have huge negatives, but also some really big positives in patches to take for both of the teams that have struggled this year.
I remember seeing, and I said this shit off air, seeing Danny Murphy's comments, reading them at half time of that game, where he was saying, would Sligo put their bodies on the line, thinking, you've really roiled Sligo up, and then all of a sudden, second half, Sligo just capitulated. Like, Alex Mendez scoring directly from a corner as well is probably just it sort of shows it was a bit of a, how would you say, it was a rough period for Sligo. And the one thing I will say from a Sligo viewpoint is, maybe if that was the Sligo team earlier in the season, when it goes back to 3-3, Sligo lose that game. I think that's probably the bit of a difference now, is the fact that they were able to just hold on for a point. I think from a Cork viewpoint, that's a massive result. Cork have been struggling for results, and considering they lost them in Turner's Cross, to then go and beat them, to then go and get a point against them up in Sligo is a massive result in the showgrounds. I think if you'd asked, probably Danny Murphy be the happier of the two bosses. Steve Feeney would probably be extremely delighted with the first half, but he'd be terrified watching that second half back. And it's a lesson. It's a massive lessons learned for Sligo, but realistically, you cannot let that 3-goal lead slip. You have to see that game out and walk away with another big win. Then you sort of go into the FAI Cup game against Athlone, having come off the back of back-to-back wins. You're thinking, okay, lovely, back-to-back wins. We go in here full of confidence, beating Bows, beating Cork, and then all of a sudden they're now going in with beating Bows, being pegged back from a 3-goal lead. How does the confidence look off the back of that? I'd say they were probably a little bit shaken, leaving the field with the fact that they let it down, and it probably makes next week's cup game even more difficult against Athlone.
Absolutely, and I suppose we'll talk about the cup semi-finals after we get through all of the games. Sligo, like we said, tale of two halves. 3-0 up half-time, end up losing the second half by the same scoreline, so 3-3 at the end of the game. Finally, from last weekend, one with a bit of controversy at the end of it, Bows and Wexford Youths, 2-1 final score, but we're going to talk probably about referees and penalties and red cards, as Rachel Kelly saw red with about 20 minutes to go in the game for a strange situation. She came out, she gathered the ball at the feet of Abby Brophy, correct? Abby Brophy came out. Some appeared to almost kick the ball out of her hands or kick it from under her control. Maybe you can't quite see on the replay, and it's a case of Rachel Kelly reacts, throws herself on the ball, but brings down Brophy in the process, and the referee has no hesitation pointing to the spot and giving a red card. Goalkeeper Maeve Ryan comes on, saves a penalty, but does concede another one later in the game for Wexford to rescue a point. Ella Malloy was unplayable in this game, but Bowes probably will be very, very hard done by the fact that they didn't take all 3 points, and the circumstances behind maybe the concession, that penalty, and the loss of Rachel Kelly, who now they're going to miss for a couple of games potentially in the build up, in the run into the end of the season.
I'll talk about Rachel Kelly. I think Bows are very hopeful that it'll only be a 1 game ban. It won't be extended, but we must have watched that replay back together about 10, 15 times.
I watched it the same on Saturday when it happened. I still don't know what happened, and I've seen it maybe 20 times.
And like from what I hear, Rachel Kelly's adamant that she kicked the ball out. Like for me, the linesman doesn't even flag to see anything, and I think the referee's positioning, he's behind Rachel Kelly's back. So unless the officials are mic'd up and the line said to him, she's dropped it and he's kicked it. From the referee's positioning, I don't know how he makes the call. I would expect the line-out to make the call because I think the line-out's in a much better position. But when you watch the replay, the line-out doesn't even flag. So unless the two of them are mic'd up and the line-out sort of said to him, it's a penalty. But I think once he points to the spot, and like we've sort of had this conversation, Lisa Murphy is there, but Lisa Murphy's not really reactive. Lisa Murphy is sort of stopped there because our keeper has the ball, and what she got there, I think
in the circumstances, the way she stopped, I don't think she has a choice.
It's a game of what ifs. I'm not really sure she would have, and I think in that situation, once the referee points to the spot, he has to give the red card in that sense. By all accounts, Rachel is devastated from it. Like unless we see a better angle, it's hard for. We can only go with what we've seen, and from what we've seen, it's not really conclusive either side. We can definitely see Abby Brophy's foot come out, but whether Abby Brophy just sort of throws the foot out thinking will Rachel just drop it, and if it's not really conclusive.
You can definitely see her kick the ball, but what you can't see is whether Rachel had control of the ball at the time or not. So it's probably always going to be a she said situation in terms of how that works. I felt it was harsh though at the time on watching it, and even looking back, I can't see that it was a nailed on red card for Rachel Kelly. I probably, if I was the referee, I'd probably give a free out, and that's the end of it. You know what I mean? But then I don't know the specifics. But
how often do we see the free out there? We don't often see the penalty.
Yeah, exactly.
We rarely ever see the penalty there, but the referee was quick to blow the whistle and quick to give the card. And then Maeve Ryan coming on for Bo's debut. We talked about her playing several underage games for Bo's this season and the 19s, but then to come on and save a penalty, you're nearly like a folk hero around Dalymount. They had the big screens up in the afternoon for the men's cup game for the people who couldn't get tickets, and then I've seen a picture of some of the players sitting in the stands watching the men, and then to go out like when she saves the penalty, I started thinking, okay, Bows will probably go on and win the game. We haven't even talked about the other goals. Mia Dodds, it was a nice strike from Mia Dodd. We had a bit of a discussion as to whether the goalkeeper's positioning, but you're more critical of Freya. The man just passed it to give the ball straight away. But Mia struck many of them from distance, and then Katie Malone obviously getting her first goal as well for Bows. I think probably meant a lot to Katie. It's been a difficult enough settling in period for a change, adaptation of style, and to get off the mark, she'd be delighted. But you were talking about Ellen Malloy, Ellen's first start. Ellen had a lot of fun playing on the 19s, as I said earlier in the show, the week before. Comes in for her first start for them, and she just looks like she's never been away. Yeah, it's just a joy to watch her.
And I can't wait to see her back in an Ireland jersey as well. And whatever the future might hold, I'd love to see her around for a bit longer. If she's, I'm not 100% sure what she's doing in terms of college, but I think she's in Carlow. So I could be wrong on that. But it's whatever she's doing. I'd like to see her around for a few more years and kind of really grow into that Women's National League. But she's as good as she wants to be, and she can be as good as she wants to be. I think we won't be seeing her in the Women's Premier Division for much longer. I can see her probably getting a move at some point if that's what she wants.
Yeah, absolutely, and like just the audacity to take the goal when the ball comes back to her first time, not even take a touch. It just shows someone brimming with confidence, and the thing is, she shouldn't have that confidence considering how long she's been out, and I think that's just a testament to Ellen for the fact that she had the confidence to strike that first time, and like she's only going to get better and better and better. I think Peamount will be disappointed. Peamount not disappointed. Peamount will be a bit gutted that she's back when they play Wexford at the weekend. They would have liked to see Ellen sort of taking her a couple of weeks, because there's no doubt she's going to have a massive impact on that game, and like she's a true game changer. Realistically, I don't want Eileen Gleeson to pick her for the Ireland squad. I don't want that to happen. I prefer Eileen to not pick her for this camp coming up. give her a little bit more time just to play some more games for Wexford, continue to build their fitness and build our in-game sharpness, and then I would be more inclined to sort of look at bringing her back in for the 2 games at the start of December. That's for me. That's what I prefer to see. There's no point in rushing Ellen back in just for the sake of having her back in.
I think anyone who can play on Sunday or Saturday should be in Ireland reckoning, and I expect to see her in that squad.
I'd just be careful of her, because we have to remember, like, she come back off under 19's duty and then done the ACL. I just wouldn't want to overload. Wouldn't want to see her overloaded too much. I prefer to just take the top cautionary route. There's no doubt she's one of the best players in the league. She's a player at the likes of herself. As you say, we don't know how long she's going to be around. We don't know how long Tara O'Hanlon's going to be around in the league. Players like that, I think we just need to appreciate them.
Absolutely. All of that action at the last weekend leaves the women's Premier Division table looking something like this. Peamount still lead. They have 9 points to spare over Rovers and Shels in second and third place, respectively. Shamrock Rovers, with that game in hand, I don't think it's going to make that much difference, other than maybe put Rovers just that nudge ahead in the race for second place. Galway United, they sit idle last weekend, of course. They sit in fourth as Bows. Wexford, they drew. They didn't overlap Galway or leap over Galway. They'll be quite happy with that. Galway with a clear run to fourth place now as the season progresses on. Wexford Youths in sixth. Athlone have closed the gap with a couple of wins over the last few weeks, have closed that gap to that group of teams in the middle tier of the table. And DLR, as we mentioned earlier, they're dropping down towards the bottom grouping there.
Referee, while we're looking at the table, I have to have a rant.
Go on.
Bows played Wexford at the weekend yesterday, the 7th of October. The 4th of November is the next league game. It's 4 weeks between games. We said last week Peamount had only played 3 league games since the World Cup. It's just so frustrating, the fact of how stop starts.
I think a lot of that is down. A lot of that is unavoidable, down to the fact that there's 11 teams in the league. If there was an even number of teams, they probably have a game in that period.
The 11 team thing for me, I said at the start of the season, I absolutely hate it. When we see it in the men's league world as well, I hate it, because I don't like the idea of one team being idle on a weekly basis, especially when you've got international breaks. You've got, if you're out of a cup competition, then you've got another international break. It's madness, and I think the other problem is the fact that the league is only 20 games. You only played 20 games this year compared to last year where you played more games. But that was always going to be the case when the FAI decided that they were having such a long break for the World Cup, and we spoke about it off air. Was there a potential need with the numbers? But you can't. It's hard to sort of plan that. You have to plan that at the start of the season. So it's just frustrating with the fact that the gap in between games would have liked even to see on the international breaks, if we'd gone with the Shield or something like that, to play to sort of for clubs who don't have and give an opportunity, because I just think it's just so stop start this year. And with the fact of the World Cup being on, the international windows for the second half of the season are always going to be a bit up in the air or a bit mental. And like the fact that we've got one in September, one in October, one in at the end of the season. So back from the World Cup, the 18th of August, you've already got an international window for 3 weeks later. 4 weeks later, you've got another one again. It's just so stop start. And I think that's probably been the biggest complaint from a lot of managers and a lot of teams this year, is just how stagnated the league has been. Some of it's probably been out of the FAI's, some of it's been out of the FAI's control, but like it's frustrating, and just with the way it's panned out. But World Cup year is probably a bit of it's an unknown for everybody in terms of Irish football. We've never had a major tournament in the summer, and the fact that the World Cup also played a lot later as well probably didn't help as well.
Absolutely, but it's, as I said, I think it's down to the mathematics of it, and it was always going to happen for somebody, and it just so happens that teams who are knocked out of the cup also idle with an international player or two and an international break. It's all kind of snowballed. Unfortunately for Bows, it's them, but it could have been anybody in that.
Before we talk about the actual ins and outs of the games next week, what's your thoughts on the fact that they brought the Peamount Wexford game forward from the Wednesday night, or the Wexford Peamount game from the Wednesday night to the Saturday before the Cup semi-finals to be played on television? As much as it's a pain for me in terms of, because I would have liked them to do both games, I think the fact of having another game on television.
but the less midweek games, the better.
It's better.
Yeah, I think you play the games on a Saturday. I think that's a positive. Personally, if it was up to me, I'd play all the games at the same time as well. On the website on finalwhistle.ie, we cover the AIL. Every single game's at 2:30 on a Saturday. You get the odd deviation. You might have 3 to 4 games in a weekend that don't play at 2:30 on a Saturday.
There's like 40 games or something, isn't there?
There's 25 men's games and 4 women's games every week. The women's play at 5, the men's play at 2:30, and I think it allows you to schedule stuff. You know your game is going to be at the same time every week. There's more opportunity to promote that for home and away fans. There's more opportunity to kind of have a standardized excitement around games. So you're in Tala at a Shamrock Rovers match and you're hearing the score from the other games. It does build interest in the league, and I think it's just a little bit either that or you go with a structure where they're like the URC in rugby, for example, where every game is at specific times and maybe 2 games at each time, so that people can sit and watch it through the weekend as a football, as a feast of football. So if you're into women's football, you can sit down and watch 3 games on a Saturday, 2 games on a Sunday, and that's your league, and everybody can watch every game. That's another model of doing it. It just feels a little ad hoc-y to me, and I think when you see stuff like the venue messing in Cork over the last few weeks, that doesn't help matters. Like if the women are going to be in Bishopstown, put them in Bishopstown and build that as your home base. Don't be flipping and flopping from one venue to the other week in, week out. I just don't think it generates that. I
said to you previously, I prefer the game to be called off than to be put to Bishopstown, and actually, because it was originally supposed to be a midweek game, then it was put to a Friday, then it was changed to Saturday in Bishopstown. I prefer it if you turn around and said, because they're local teams, listen, we're going to play it on a Wednesday night a week or 2 later, just to make sure it's played there. Because I think for me, I've said it so many times, I don't like when clubs deviate back to another state. We've seen it with DLR as well, for the fact that we're told the ball's not available, they have to play on home farm. Like that's it. Don't get me wrong, home farm has some great facilities, but it's a weird type of venue to go the other side of the city for two Southside clubs as well. It's nearly as if it's just playing in a neutral venue just to play it. Whereas, I just don't like it. But I do think your model of structure, like I think the URC route would probably be a better one for this sort of league, for the fact that I still think women's football in Ireland is such a niche market when it comes to the fans and who watches the games and stuff like that. But over time, it's probably eventually going to go to a stage where we have with the AIL, where a lot of fixtures are at the same time, and that would then give a lot more structure. But I think that's a lot of planning that we may see as the league continues to grow and continues to expand.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see that happen as the days come. So that is the league wrapped up for this week, but obviously we've got 2 fixtures next week, as well as a couple of cup games, 2 semi-finals in the cup. Let's start there. Shamrock Rovers and Shels repeated this week's game. We need to see a better showing from Shelbourne in that game, and then Sligo Rovers versus Athlone immediately afterwards in the showgrounds. I think, and I think it's probably, I'm going to get myself in trouble here for saying this, but it seems a little bit lopsided. We're looking at lopsided draws in the Men's Rugby World Cup at the moment, where 2 quarterfinals are much more high powered than the other 2 quarterfinals. Semi-finals could be very one-sided potentially. This could also have the same effect. Athlone, Sligo, despite showing flashes of good form in recent weeks, have not been at the level of both Rovers and Shels. And you'd expect the winners of the cup to come from that semi-final, like maybe even along the lines of a 6-0 like we saw a couple of years ago. That might be a little bit past the point, but I think you're better. Shels and Shamrock Rovers, you'd expect one of those to come through and win the cup outright at this point, surely.
You would, but I think, and I'll talk about Athlone, Shamrock Rovers, Athlone and Sligo Rovers first. I expect Athlone to come through this game. I think Sligo will have their moments of success in the game, but I do think Athlone will be too strong for them in the end. They probably run out 3-1 winners, something like 3-1 winners for me. I think Sligo will make it difficult for as long as they can, but once Athlone maybe go 1 or 2, I think they'll be comfortable enough. I think Athlone have a lot of wrongs to right from last year's cup. I think the first half performance against Shels last year was very poor in the cup final, and I think that's probably what cost them, because if they'd started the way they started the second half, there's no doubt that they'd they'd probably had a much better chance. And then if Scarlett Heron's effort goes in, that it isn't given offside, then we could have had a completely different game. From the other one, I find it very hard to see what Shels are going to change to actually really be extremely competitive. I've said it on this show, said it to multiple people. I don't think, bar Maggie Pearce and probably Christy Gray, I don't really think the signings they brought in from abroad have worked. That they haven't been great. They haven't given them what they probably would have looked from it. I think Morgan Rees showed patches of what she is capable of, but to me it just seems like Shels are just a bit conjointed. Like Saturday just looked like a bit so they looked so unorganized at times. Like to see them ripped apart at ease was a very big surprise. And how do they make that change? Does he change the goalkeeper? Does he bring back in Courtney Maguire? Does he give Amanda another go? Like, I think Noel's going to have a real selection headache on his brain this week. I think Collie O'Neill definitely goes into that a lot happier. Collie O'Neill, he sort of look at to say, okay, we got the win. We walk away happy. Whereas from a Shels viewpoint, Shels are the ones who have to do all the changing. And are they capable of doing the changing? That's the question. Do they need to they need to get Noel Murray into the game a lot more? I thought Kerry Letman was okay for them backing up a performance against DLR, but like the fact he made the 4 changes at half time is he's just wanting a reaction. I think if he doesn't get a reaction in the first 20 minutes on Saturday from his side, they could easily find a repeat of what happened, and then their season is nearly just about over. They're just playing out them last 3 games for the sake of it.
Do Rovers win the semi-final?
Yes.
Okay. So you're expecting to see Shamrock Rovers and Athlone progress through the games of the weekend?
I'm playing Tallaght Stadium in the final, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting time. Of course, a couple of Athlone girls have moved to Shamrock Rovers in recent transfer windows, so plenty of bit of niggle. If that's how it comes through, I have already pre-ordered my humble pie servant for next week, though, so I know somebody's going to upset me and upset you, and well, not upset us. We're going to upset somebody, and they're going to react to that, and we'll hear it all about it in our text messages over the next 7 days or so. Let's take a look quickly before we move on for this week. The Irish players abroad this week. Just
before we do, you can probably touch on the league fixtures first. We haven't really.
Oh, sorry. Of course.
We haven't touched on the 2 league games this week.
I've one eye on the clock. We're approaching the hour mark.
Yeah, I'm conscious of that. I think from a Cork treaty viewpoint, Cork obviously getting a lot of good credit from the result against Sligo. Drew with Treaty earlier on the season. I think Treaty be looking to back up and get a win. I wouldn't be surprised if Treaty come away from Turner's Cross from Bishopstown to 3 points. Then in the other game, Wexford Peamount. If Wexford turn up, they could really, really, really upset Peamount and put the pressure on Peamount. I wouldn't be surprised if this one ends a draw. I think Peamount will have to be at their very best to get the 3 points, but I wouldn't be surprised if James O'Callaghan takes a draw and walks away happy.
Yeah, but at the same time, if he can put a nail in Shels' coffin and almost in Shamrock Rovers' title challenge as well with a win, I'd say he would be quite happy with that as well. Of course, the lay of the land, 9 points, the gap at the moment. Shels, 3 games left. They can get those 9 points. They have a slightly better goal difference, but it's unlikely that Peamount are going to drop every single point between now and the end of the season. Although, not to tempt fate, but it has happened before. Shamrock Rovers have those 9 points to close as well, but they have 4 games to do it in. Of course, they don't play it this week. Peamount idle the week after, so they do have 2 opportunities to close that gap to what would look like a decent chance with 3 points between them, 2 games going if Peamount don't win this weekend. In terms of the international players that we're going to get onto there, Amber Barrett, great news for her this week. She's had a rough season or 2 at club level across the German league. She moved to Belgium, Standard Liège, in the off season, and she's had an impressive start to life there. She's got 4 goals so far this season, 2 of them coming today. She'll be very, very happy. Although the side lost in a top of the table clash in Belgium, 2 goals for her in her 90 minutes, her first 90 minutes for the club as well. Claire Reardon played most of that game as well. Some of the big news: Megan Campbell came back off the bench. She played the last couple of minutes in Everton in their game today. She'll be delighted. They got beat 1-0, but she'll be delighted to be back playing. Heather Payne played the full 90 there for Everton as well. Denise O'Sullivan, 2 games this week for her side, doing quite well in the NWSL, but it looks like they've probably been pipped. I think they were beaten the 0-0 draw for her last night against
San Diego Fs.
That's right. Kira Carusa was involved in that as well. So we're seeing Irish players really featuring at the top of most of these competitions in England and Scotland and in the US, as well as Belgium. And Deborah Andel Hart played a couple of minutes at the end of the game for her side, Koiga in Denmark as well today. So loads of action there.
Abby Larkin making her first start as well for Glasgow, having come off the bench twice. The one thing though, you will be just sort of paying attention to Caitlin Hayes wasn't involved at all today for Celtic in their league game. Picked up a bit of a knock against Glasgow on Thursday evening, so it'll be interesting to see if she's okay, if she plays next week. The one I'm looking at there, Sinead Farrelly. I think they were away in Oregon this week, so the Ireland squad will be announced in the next 10 days or so. Will we see Sinead Farrelly named that Ireland squad? If not, I assume there'll be a lot of questions asked because we were told it was due to a back injury. Played away from home. Had to fly.
Do you want a Euro bet on whether she's in the squad or not? I think she won't be in the squad.
I'm on the fence. I don't know. I think I have a feeling she won't be myself.
I think we might have seen the end of Sinead Farrelly in an Ireland jersey. Izzy Atkinson, she came on for her first appearance of the season as well for West Ham. And Aoife Colville, her first start for Glasgow City. So plenty of action, of course. Loads of other players active. You can get all that information on finalwhistle.ie. Just go to the women's menu on the page and you'll be able to just pick through the various competitions and see who's doing well abroad. Overall, of course, the Americans with a bit of an advantage here, seeing as they're a summer season. The top four names all playing in America at the moment. But as you move down through the list, plenty of Irish girls featuring in Scotland and England as well. Ciara Grant, she was also out today, didn't feature for Hearts in their game. So plenty of Irish interest as we move around the continent. Of course, the Champions League back in the next couple of weeks as well. So we'll be seeing a bit more Irish movement on that. Aaron, your performance of the weekend, who's impressed you the most? Who might be the surprise inclusion in Eileen Gleeson? Actually, before we get on to that, Eileen Gleeson confirmed as the Ireland manager for the duration of the qualification stage, at least, of the UEFA Champions League this side of Christmas. And in other managerial news, Wexford have advertised the role. They are looking for applications for a new manager. UEFA A license required. Will there be much interest? Anyone stand out to you? Could we see Tom Elms going back there?
I suspect there'll be a lot of interest. I wonder will Doyle sort of put his name forward as well. You also failed to mention the fact that Eileen Gleeson has told the FAI she doesn't want the job on a permanent basis. She has said she's happy to go back to her role as with the women's head of women's football, and the FAI currently have a long list. They said where they'll be looking to whittle that down to a short list in the next month. So the progress is ongoing in the background. I think there will be a lot of applicants. I think there will be a good few applicants for the Wexford job. It's an enticing project with the fact of the merger as well. Who'll want it? I'd say loads of them will want it. It's a great one, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some big names go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Watch this space. We'll see what happens across Tolka Park over the next few weeks and months as that process continues. But there might even be more opportunities to get involved in the league in terms of coaching, because there's a few people, maybe get to this time of the year, people start reassessing where they are, what they're doing. But Wexford, the first one to advertise for next season for a new coach. We'll be interested to see how that goes for them. That's it for this week. Aaron, neck on the block. Will Peamount get the points at that they need on Saturday?
No, they'll get a point.
Okay, we might hold.
But I do think they'll beat Galway in their game after the international break.
That will effectively wrap up the points, those four required to seal the title. Plenty of football left. We'll be talking about all of that next week when we come back after the FAI Cup semi-finals, all to play for at the weekend. Talk to you then.